You need to wait for a manager to let you go home. Okay. So, I work at a store that sells kitchen appliances and other kitchen-related stuff. Normally when we're supposed to leave or go on break, we're supposed to tell our manager. I was helping a long line at cash and had already been there for 8 hours and assumed they had someone to cover me. I wasn't allowed to use the walkies to ask to be covered to go home, so I quickly found my manager and told her my shift was done. She got really pissy at me and said, "Could you really not stay a few more minutes?" I tried to tell her I thought you had someone to cover me, I can stay if you want. She then replied, No, just go, but next time you need to wait for a manager to let you go home. Record scratch. This was never a rule. I asked other people who've worked there for years and they agreed that it wasn't a rule. I worked again a few days later and the store was empty. My shift was over and was about to ask to go home, then I remember what my manager told me. Cue malicious compliance. I continued to wander the store and slightly fix shelves, making sure I was near my manager. After about 2.5 hours she said, "You're still here, why haven't you gone home?" I replied, "You said I need to wait to be told to go home." My manager looked at me as though she was mentally kicking herself. "Just go," she said. I clocked out and that's how I got paid an extra $30 for doing literally nothing. Edit. Holy crap, this post blew up. I wanna answer a few questions and comments I see y'all have been making. 1. Are you only making like $12 an hour? Nah, I did some rounding, I actually make $15 an hour, but rounded it down for simplicity's sake. Probably should have elaborated on that. 2. Didn't you just waste your time? Nah, this company is very stingy with hours for everyone and the way I see it I got paid while barely helping the company, so I don't care. 3. You should definitely be making more. Yeah, I should, but this is only a temporary job to make extra money until school starts in September, so don't worry about my financial well-being.
Now to the comments. She still hasn't specifically told you that you don't have to follow this rule. Malicious compliance is still in effect. Kicking herself or wanting to kick you.
OP replied. Hard to tell, I was one of those "are you ducking kidding me" faces, could really go both ways.
The thing is, if she had had a real conversation with you the first thing, you probably wouldn't have even thought of it again. It always pays off to treat your employees like people and with respect, although sometimes you don't see the things like this that don't happen. Bravo, OP. Our retail store had a rule that employees could not leave the store until their bag was checked by a manager. This could take a very long time, particularly at the holidays. You'd clock out and then wait 2 minutes for your bag check. So, I stopped clocking out until after the bag check and pocketed some extra holiday pay.
Yeah, I believe there were several court cases about this, and almost everywhere it is illegal now for a business to require you to either have a bag check, or lock the doors, or literally anything after clocking out. Have to have clocking out be your absolute last task.
I assume you're writing from a US-centric perspective. This unfortunately is still an issue in my country, Australia. If you don't mind staying late, malicious compliance for money is great. LOL.
OP replied. Well, the store was empty and I basically got paid to wander.
Well, she hasn't yet told you not to follow her rule. When I worked midnight shift, day shift took so long to get out of their morning meetings, sometimes well over the 30-minute overlap that was scheduled. Many of us would wait near the office where we could overhear their meeting, and knew it was just them talking about random, non-work related stuff. So, I started going home at my scheduled time, even though the rule was that we had to be relieved from post. I got chewed out for that, so I started putting in for overtime when I had to stay. I got chewed out for that. Luckily, they realized the problem was day shift ducking about, and the problem got resolved.
So the expectation was for you to clock out but still work?
Classic wage theft. See, at my work we have to inform a manager we are leaving. They don't get to say no. It's very clear. If you don't tell them, you will be punished, and if they say no, they will be punished. It's a great system and I'm very happy with it. Makes sure other workers won't be ducked and neither will the person leaving.
This is the most logical answer. I'm lucky to not have a manager on site, so if I have to leave, I just tell a colleague, so they know not to look for me if there's a fire/emergency.
I think it is a great system. It works very smoothly and keeps everyone honest. Most importantly, it doesn't treat anyone like children. Everyone is responsible for managing their own time off. You can use it as you like, but once you run out for the year, you are out. Simple as. This reminds me of when I was a kid first striking out on my own, but due to my hours I didn't have time to make it home for Christmas. I showed up at 4 a.m. on Christmas Eve to stock. My shift should have ended at noon, but there was still stuff to put away, so I kept doing it. At about 2 my manager was like, "Go home, YTF, are you still here?" And I said, well, there was still more to do and I have nothing to go home to. Wasn't my favorite Christmas. Screw managers who invent personal convenience rules which later come back to bite them. Well done, OP. She got really pissy at me. Bullying is often a hook and clue that their ruling is not going to be in the manual. When they bully, start looking in the manual for opportunity to make a little more dough, report them, insist on the rule being applied to everyone, whatever suits your fancy. I'm not sure what makes me angrier, that your boss has the audacity to think that she has to grant you permission to leave when your scheduled shift has ended, or how little money you got working that overtime.
You only get overtime if you work over 40+ hours.
Depends on the state. CA is 8 hours in a day or 40 hours in a week, also the 7th day in a work week regardless of hours. Everyone should take the time to learn their OT rules and make sure your bosses aren't forgetting them. Nothing better than seeing a manager come unstuck from their own stupid rules. Good stuff, OP. Don't undersell yourself. Fixing shelves while shadowing the manager is valid labor, not nothing. They're probably not paying you what you are worth anyway. She got really pissy at me and said, "Could you really not stay a few more minutes? I get paid to do certain amount of hours. If not in the contract that I automatically do overtime, even a minute, then I may or may not stay. I may or may not want the extra pay. It's my choice, I'm not a hostage." She said, "Could you please a few more minutes?" I'd almost always stay. I'm a team player, I'm not difficult, and if you ask nicely, within reason, then sure. Is that difficult for managers to understand? It also does not change anything. It does not undermine their authority. It does not make them look weaker or bad. If anything, it's how people should manage. Just be nice. Fred Meyer would schedule me until noon but not schedule anyone else to start until 3 o'clock. I'd go to leave at noon, because that's when I'm scheduled to leave, and they'd tell me, "We don't have anyone scheduled until 3 o'clock. You need to stay until we have someone to relieve you." Stayed a few times when I was new, but then just started leaving at noon. Got told I needed to let the manager know I was leaving. They kept trying to get me to stay until 3 o'clock. Told them to schedule me until 3 o'clock then. Gave my 2 weeks notice. My last day was on the 2nd of July and they freaked out on me for leaving them high and dry over the busy holiday. Oh well. So typical of a retail manager. I was picturing the ending to be like so anyways. The store closed for the long weekend with me inside, so I went to the TV section and binge-watched movies, ordered a pizza, and hung out. When the manager came in on Monday, I had stayed for 72 hours, and with time and a half I had made $1,600 from my overtime hours. LOL.
OP replied. Bish I ducking wish.
I had a manager tell me the same thing once. She technically wasn't even my manager. I was working in a large department store and my shift that day was in the men's section. My manager was on break when it was time for me to go home. I called the manager in the next department over, purses, to let her know my shift was over. This was during Christmas time, we were short-staffed and the store was busy. She told me I couldn't leave my register until the next person got there, who was apparently running late. I told her I was exhausted, dehydrated, and had already worked an extra 2 hours and was ready to go home. She refused to let me go and proceeded to ignore all my calls. I think the person that was supposed to cover me called out. Next thing I know I'm helping this nice elderly couple and then I'm on the floor staring at the ceiling to a lot of concerned faces and an EMT unit. Apparently, I fainted from dehydration. My manager all of a sudden appeared and asked why I didn't go home hours ago. I told them I tried but Nancy refused to let me go. She later apparently denied this. But they could see I repeatedly called and she didn't answer. She never did speak to me again.